So the combination of carbs and protein, especially essential amino acids after the workout, seems to be the best combination to promote recovery. We also tell people that's the best time to take creatine. Creatine supplement sales have doubled in the last 2 or 3 years because people are becoming more aware of the role of creatine from pregnancy through the late senior adult. There are benefits on all host of things. Everybody ought to be getting at least 3 grams of creatine throughout the lifespan because of general health benefits. Usually 30 to 40 minutes ahead of time before you start working out, some type of light snack. That provides some carbohydrate, but also really helps provide some amino acids available for the blood, so you don't have to break yourself down as you're exercising. Then when you're done with exercise, that first 2-3 hours or so is really critical, because if you provide high quality carbohydrate and protein, you can optimize glycogen resynthesis, you can optimize protein synthesis, you can also promote hydration.
Now, we all know that diet and nutrients are important, but especially so if we are physically active, even at the amateur level. Could you talk to us about the nutrient timing and what that nutrient composition looks like also?
Yeah, so we're trying to optimize the availability of nutrients around an exercise bout to then lead to greater training adaptations or health adaptations. And we used to think this was just for something for athletes to optimize glycogen recovery and protein synthesis. We now, though, know that active individuals who are trying to stay active and prevent the typical aging response, is active sport nutrition. It's also key for them, because if you time your nutrients properly, you can help the training adaptation, be less sore, etc. And so that's basically the concept. And if you look at the basic things that we try to do, we try to provide well hydration before you're active. Then you want to make sure you have carbohydrate and a little bit of protein. Protein to provide, especially the essential amino acids, a high quality protein, usually 30 to 40 minutes ahead of time before you start working out, some type of light snack. That provides some carbohydrate, but also really helps provide some amino acids available for the blood, so that you don't have to break yourself down as you're exercising. Then during exercise, we were focusing on hydration and carbohydrate, and we've actually done studies where we've added things like branched-chain amino acids to the energy drinks to try to prevent catabolism. And then when you're done with exercise, that first 2-3 hours or so is really critical, because if you provide high-quality carbohydrate and protein, you can optimize glycogen resynthesis, you can optimize protein synthesis, you can also promote hydration. And then if you add things like antioxidants and anti-inflammatories, then you're able to handle that stressful situation better by just basically timing the nutrients correctly. And this is probably more important for people who don't train as regularly, because how often you've done something on the weekend warrior, or you go out and then you do something and have a great time, and then the next 3 or 4 days you are so sore, right? And so if we can help individuals have less soreness and don't get sick with intense exercise activity, they tend to be more active, and that's really what we're trying to promote.
I have read, and you can confirm or you can contradict this if you wish. I've read that if you're going to consume protein after exercise, that it's better to do that in conjunction with a carbohydrate source also. They work together. Would that be true?
Yes. So when you have a post-workout carbohydrate, you replenish your carbohydrate. When you add protein to that, you get a greater insulin response. And this is for people who are healthy, not diabetics, but a greater insulin response. And that helps drive the amino acids to be more effective. And so the combination of carbs and protein, especially essential amino acids after the workout, seems to be the best combination to promote recovery. We also tell people that's the best time to take creatine, because creatine uptake is carbohydrate, glucose, and insulin influenced. And so if I'm going to have a post-workout drink that's going to have carbs and protein and get insulin level, this is the best time to provide creatine to help absorption of creatine as well.
You briefly mentioned hydration there. How significant is correct hydration, even if you're an athlete at the amateur level? And then On top of that, then electrolyte consumption too, because one goes hand in hand with the other.
Yes, it's important, and it's probably, again, more important for people who don't train regularly because they're not as well acclimatized to the heat. And so when they exercise in heat, they sweat, they lose a lot of sodium and other electrolytes, and they are actually more susceptible to heat exhaustion and heat illness because they're not used to it and their body's not adapted properly. So we want everybody to begin an exercise bout well hydrated. During exercise, you want to make sure you're consuming every 10, 15 minutes some water if it's less than an hour, or a sports drink if it's more than an hour. And a lot of sports, you only exercise a little bit, but you're out there for 3 or 4 hours. You actually are sweating the entire time between even intermittent bouts of activity. And so it's real important to get a good liter, liter and a half, depending on your sweat rate per hour. And the longer you exercise, it's even more important. If you start an exercise bout dehydrated, or you dehydrate during activity, your performance drops about 10% every 2% loss. So if you're recreational athlete, you want to compete well, you want to stay as hydrated as possible. And so the goal is to not lose more than 1 to 2% of your body weight. So if you weigh 150 pounds, that's basically 1.5. That's a little bit less than a liter, 0.75 liters of fluid. If you're a larger athlete, say 220 pounds, 100 kilos, and you lose 1% of your body weight, that's 2.2, that's 1 kilo, that's 1 liter of fluid. So you'll need to make sure that you have a little bit more. We actually tell our athletes to test themselves, weigh themselves before they go out in an exercise environment that's hot, and weigh themselves afterwards. The delta, the lost weight, is fluid. And so if you double that, it tells you kind of how many liters per hour you need to consume if it's converted to kgs or weight loss. So if you lose 2.2 pounds, 1 kg in a half hour, that means your sweat rate is 2. And so you need to try to get as close to 2 liters per hour so you can maintain your fluid balance no more than 1 or 2% loss.
What is your preferred source of hydration? And I say that in the context of sports drinks being a huge market. So is there anything to that, or is water with some electrolytes in there, is that optimum?
Yeah, I think anything less than an hour, water is probably fine. If you go more than an hour, you do need those electrolytes. And so you may not need as much carbohydrate if you're working out for an hour and a half, but you do need electrolytes. So these low-calorie sports drinks seem to be helpful for that. And then if you're really going to be exercising a long time, you really do need the extra carbohydrate. But that's usually not until 2, 3, 4 hours into a bout where you really get the benefit of the extra carbs. And so really, it depends on what you're doing. Anything less than an hour is probably water. Anything between 1 to 2 hours is probably some type of low-calorie sports drink would be good. And then after that, make sure you're getting plenty of carbs throughout the entire workout. The other thing I want to mention is we have different sweat rates and sodium loss. And so people who are heavy sweaters need to drink more. And in some instances, they need more sodium in the sports drink than is typically provided. The recommendations for athletes is generally about 0.6 to 0.7 grams of sodium salt per liter of fluid. However, some athletes may need up to 1 gram. So this is about almost double the amount of salt basically in a sports drink. And so if somebody's exercising a lot, dehydrating, one of the things we first do is to add a little bit extra salt to their sports drink. And that helps with the fluid retention.
I spoke with a doctor the other day about the benefits of consuming caffeine. And I know anecdotally, certainly with some of my own active friends, that they ingest caffeine prior to a training session or a race. What are your thoughts on caffeine consumption?
Well, you certainly has ergogenic effects. So the classic is that if you consume caffeine with your sports drink or a couple cups of coffee, at 60 minutes before an exercise bout, like a run or something, or a cycling bout, it mobilizes more fat. You spare muscle glycogen use, your carbohydrate use, so you can cycle longer or run longer before you hit the proverbial wall and you have to really burn a lot of fat. And so endurance athletes, one of the best ergogenic aids is about 3 to 6 milligrams per kg to body weight of caffeine about an hour during or before an exercise bout. And you're seeing a lot of sports drinks even have caffeine in them, and energy drinks. And some athletes will dilute those and get a little bit of caffeine during the event. Now, there's a whole huge amount of people who will do non-endurance exercise, and this is where the pre-workout supplement is important. We know that that has caffeine. Most of those are very high in caffeine. And what that does is allow you to have more power, more stamina during a workout, and have better mental focus during a workout. And so that you potentially can work harder. And there's studies that if you simply provide extra caffeine and an energy drink or your fluid hydration and you're doing weightlifting and basic fitness type of activities, not only you have a better training adaptation, but you also have a little bit more fat loss. And so it's kind of interesting that I've heard in some products they basically are a soft drink with extra caffeine. Okay. And there's actually studies showing that those approaches will help you burn a little more fat. And so there's a place for both the endurance athlete, which is what the classical is, and then we've done a lot of studies on energy drinks and pre-workout supplements, and you generally have greater power, more endurance, better mental focus during a hard workout and then recovery. So if you apply this to general fitness, you get a benefit. And then if you're an athlete and you take a pre-workout, most of the time, winning and losing is whether you're fatigued or not at the end of the bout or end of the competition, or if you make good mental decisions at the end of the competition. And there have been championships won and lost by not being focused and not thinking clearly and calling timeouts when you didn't have it, and you get a technical, you lose the entire national championship. This happens. And so being able to think clearly, make good decisions, and react better, this is where these pre-workout supplements can come in. And they're basically caffeine with a few other little nutrients that may have some benefit, but we think the primary role is caffeine.
You mentioned hitting the wall there. I think everybody's familiar with that feeling of running on empty at the end of a race or a training session. What exactly is happening in the body there?
Well, the primary fuel for high-intensity exercise, prolonged or intermittent, is carbohydrate, muscle glycogen. And so as your muscle glycogen is being depleted, your liver glycogen kicks the glucose out and keeps the blood levels high, but eventually you're going to run out. If you look at the total amount of glycogen in muscle and liver, you probably can only do about 2.5, 3 hours of high-intensity exercise, and then you're going to be required to use a lot of fat as fuel, and you end up having to slow down. So this perception of hitting the wall is basically getting to the point where you don't have enough carbohydrate to fuel the intensity, and you just really feel sluggish. You can't get through, you can't maintain your pace. And so what we do is we try to optimize muscle glycogen storage, carbohydrate load before people start doing a prolonged bout so that you have some extra carbohydrate, extra gas in the tank, and you don't hit the wall during competition, right? You don't want to hit the wall. You want to be able to have enough carb to be able to manage it. And then things like carbohydrate gels and drinks and things during prolonged activity can also help maintain blood glucose, augment the liver a little bit to be able to keep the glucose levels high, and actually can feed the muscle up to about 30 to 60 grams per hour. And so that's basically a liter of sports drink.
You brought up the term creatine earlier on. I think many people will be familiar with that particular supplement name. Creatine occurs naturally in the body, and it helps to boost athletic performance, as you mentioned already. But it's also being investigated as far as its clinical applications are concerned.
We did the first study in the United States in athletes and showed it improved. We just thought it was performance. We just thought it would just improve energy availability of the muscle so you can sprint better, recover faster between sprints. And as that research evolved and we started looking at health outcomes, we started seeing all these potential health benefits. So what started out as a supplement for athletes now is widespread use for health. And if you know anything about what's happened in the supplement industry, creatine supplement sales have doubled in the last 2 or 3 years because people are becoming more aware of the role of creatine from pregnancy through the late senior adult. There are benefits on all host of things. So we have to help inform people about that, we developed a website called creatineforhealth.com. And you can look on there and see all the potential medical benefits that we're finding for things like reducing concussion severity, reducing spinal cord injury damage, reducing stroke, reducing arrhythmia effects. In pregnant individuals, women and animals, helps prevent the asphyxia that can occur as the childbirth goes through and may not have enough oxygen. And sometimes that causes damage to the child and cognition issues, et cetera. This helps prevent it. And it actually in animals markedly improves the survival rate. And we now know that there's all types of medical conditions that have energy availability issues, like mitochondrial dysfunction. And by increasing the creatine in the muscle, it gives it energy as the backup source in case there's not enough oxygen. And so there's a lot of applications. And so you're seeing creatine in the middle age and older individual, not only to improve training adaptations, but to help manage lots of chronic disease issues as you age. And we're doing a study right now where there have been some studies showing that if middle-aged and older folks take creatine in shorter-term studies, actually their cognition is improved. We know it can increase the brain creatine content, and that's a factor on fatigue and things because you have extra energy in your brain. And so we're actually doing a long-term study now in middle-aged to older individuals where we're putting people in a training program, we're putting them on a diet to promote weight loss, and we think it will preserve muscle mass and improve cognition. And really the focus is trying to improve cognition. And so if I can do those things as you age, then you're fitter, you're stronger, you're less susceptible to falls and injuries, which usually is a devastating pathology when you get older. You may have better management of chronic disease issues like diabetes and things that studies have shown. There's even data on lowering blood lipids. And so you get all these benefits by being fit. And then you add creatine, then you actually have even more capacity to handle damage or lack of oxygen. And if you get a stroke, it reduces the size of the stroke in the brain. All these things that we now know. We're actually working and talking with the military to try to make sure our military gets enough creatine in their diet, because we know that if they get traumatic brain injury, this is an injury insult to the brain. It actually in animals has reduced the size and the damage associated with that type of injury by 25 to 50% in some studies. And so we actually would recommend with the International Society of Sport Nutrition, any athlete, any military person who is susceptible to concussion ought to be taking creatine. In fact, in 2011, we did a conference on creatine in Cambridge, actually in the UK. And one of the primary points that the conference did and publication came out is that everybody ought to be getting at least 3 grams of creatine throughout the lifespan because of general health benefits. And then if you want performance or cognitive benefits, you may need a little more. If you have certain diseases, you may need to have a little bit more. But everybody ought to make sure they have enough creatine. In fact, there's now some data in NHANES, this large database, where they're looking at health outcomes over many years and generations. And we now have studies that show that kids that have less creatine in their diet don't grow as fast. They kind of have not as tall. They have less muscle. They have greater body fat. And there's associated with some cognitive deficits associated with that, and even neuromuscular. And so it's important. We think that what's going to happen the next 10 years or so is creatine will be positioned as a conditionally essential nutrient that needs to have a minimal amount in your diet just to help manage and prevent a lot of health issues as you age.
That's really interesting because I remember taking creatine myself maybe about 20 years ago. And at that point in time, the advice was to take it up for only maybe 6 or 8 weeks. But things have moved on since then. And you're saying that it can be taken indefinitely.
Yeah, we did some long-term studies. We gave as much as 25 grams per day for, 3 to 6 months. And then we did a 2-year long-term study at 10 grams per day in athletes. And many of the studies have gone, in some of these clinical conditions where they don't produce enough creatine naturally. Those individuals have been on high-level creatine 20, 25, 30 grams per day since 1984. in some conditions, okay, because that's important. So there's a lot of safety data now. We used to think by thinking just at the muscle, you don't need more than 3 or 4 weeks because your muscle fills it up and you'll need a little bit to keep the muscle. But we now know all the other tissues in the body are getting benefit by creatine. And so it may be for health you need more versus just performance or short term. And we actually have athletes will take creatine along your training, as long as you're active. There's really no reason not to at least take the minimal, low dose 3 to 5 grams just for general health. And then the larger the athlete is, we recommend taking a little bit more to help because they have more muscle. And so generally it's 5 to 10 grams per day continually during training. And then for health, as you get older, at least a teaspoon a day is about almost 5 grams. That'll be plenty of creatine for you to be able to have some health benefits. And then we think cognitive enhancement, you need a little bit more because it takes a little bit more creatine in the diet more frequently to get into the brain a little bit more effectively. And so that's why we're doing a 10-gram study, 2 5-gram doses twice a day in older individuals to specifically look at cognition. So the idea that you just do it short term and get on or off it, we now know there's lots and lots of data showing safety, and it's probably a good idea to at least have 3 to 5 grams throughout your lifetime.
So because of the scope really of what creatine can do, whether you're active or not, it's probably true to say that it's probably more impactful than something like a protein powder or whey protein isolate could possibly ever be.
Yeah, because your protein's mainly going to stimulate protein synthesis. So in populations trying to build muscle, it's important. Or in populations where you lose muscle mass, like if you have an extended hospital stay, where you're going to atrophy or something like that, that's probably the most important time to use that in a clinical population. Or as you're aging, you tend to lose muscle mass. And because our protein intake doesn't stay as high and our ability to absorb proteins and digest isn't as good, so it may make it be good for them to have like a shake a day of some type of carbohydrate, protein powder or drink to just help maintain. But as you get older, though, there's so many health conditions that if you don't have enough oxygen to tissue, what's the next energy system that's got to come to play? It's got to be your phosphocreatine, your anaerobic ability. And we know that the more phosphocreatine in the muscle, it helps handle those injury insults. Or in cases of fatigue, even things like sleep deprivation, there are studies showing that it helps brain thinking if you're sleep deprived, because you basically are fatiguing the brain and energy availability, and next thing you know, you got to depend more on the phosphocreatine. So we think it's more important as you age, probably, than we ever thought about just a performance-enhancing effect.
Just on protein, you mentioned it there. What is your take on how much protein somebody should be consuming if they are looking to maintain their muscle mass as they age?
Yeah, so generally the RDA or RDI here is about 0.8 to 1 grams per kg per day. We know active individuals need about double of that at least. And elders need to be about 1.1 to 1.2 at least grams per kg per day. And that's to account for that digestion and absorption difference. If you're training and you're elder, you're going to break more protein down. So you probably need to be in the 1.5 to 1.8 grams per kg per day, which is what we recommend for active individuals, right? So it's all that if the more protein breakdown, the more protein in your diet. And catabolic conditions where you're losing muscle mass, aging, hospital stays, injuries, hip fractures, all will cause muscle loss. Why is it muscle loss? Because you're in negative deficit, you're not getting enough protein. And so any of those conditions as you age is really key. And so what we're trying to tell adults as they age, make sure you're active, make sure you're doing resistance training, some resistance activity, and then make sure there's enough protein in your diet spaced out throughout the day so that you get this general benefit of enough protein to be able to meet the needs. And then if you know you're going to the hospital for surgery or have some event that puts you need even more protein to be able to handle that catabolic condition. And then in those folks, we actually will recommend a little bit of HMB on top of the protein. HMB is a metabolite of leucine that seems to have anti-catabolic effects. And there's a study that our colleagues here in our aging group led, Mick Dietz's group. They did it 800 people placebo or normal care in 800 people where they gave them an amino acid drink with HMB, and they looked at people after heart attacks that were going to be extended stay in the hospital. And the survival rate 90 days out after this major insult was 50% greater by having simply amino acids and a little bit of HMB. We think, yeah, creatine is going to be better, okay? There's other things like if you get cancer, it's a wasting. Anything that's a wasting, it's really, really important to have the extra protein. So the older you get, a little bit more protein. And then if you have any of these conditions that have a lot of protein breakdown, you really need a little bit more protein. Or you have a condition like COPD where you're really having to breathe a lot and extra energy. They typically get very lean and lose a lot of muscle mass because of the energy deficit. They need 2 or 3 of those shakes a day to actually help maintain muscle mass. As you get older, a 10% drop in muscle mass increases the probability of death, mortality, markedly, okay? And so if you can maintain strength and balance, you don't fall, and you can maintain muscle mass, you're not going to have a better quality of life. You're going to have less problems if you do get sick or have some condition that puts you in a situation where you're not going to be able to move around and get as much activity. And so those bed rest situations are really common. And what happens if you get sick, you're in the hospital for 10 days, it takes so long to recover, you may not ever recover. So the idea is get a strong, most muscle mass you can before you get sick or before you have a problem, and then do the things to help maintain muscle mass when you're sick so that you can withstand those 2, 3, 4 incidents throughout a lifespan that may cause those catabolic conditions. So it's now protein's not only important for athletes, it's really important for and then you add creatine and other things on top of it, then you really have some potential benefit.
And finally, can I ask you about the importance of recovery? What does recovery, or what do recovery days look like? Are they complete rest, or are they active recovery where you're doing some little bit of exercise?
Yeah, it depends on the volume of training. We always try to do some active recovery. Even if it's just light stretching and moving and getting a little cardiovascular work just to get after a very intense workout. If you look at what athletes do, they never really take the day off. They always are doing something, okay? And the same thing as you get older, you want to stay active and do as much as possible as you're aging. And if you get really sore or fatigued or tired, you still want to do a light walk, a little bit of stretching, something to get the activity, because that actually helps, the muscle adapt and get things out of the muscle, the toxins and things out and circulate around. The body can handle them and maintain the flexibility, and all those things are really important. And so we always recommend recovery. Now, after that, active recovery, and then nutritionally, there are things you can do. So, for example, if you know that you're going to have a big weekend, you're going to play basketball or some soccer match, and you're going to get sore, you're going to get sore. Well, anti-inflammatories, things like tart cherry, okay, beetroot juice, curcumin, things that are anti-inflammatories, antioxidants, vitamin C, vitamin E, selenium, whole host of things. We've just done studies on anthocyanin, basically, or tart cherries and different compounds like that. They help the individual not get as sore, not as much inflammation, so they can withstand higher levels of training and recover faster. We're doing a study right now with a military type of population where we are changing the type of proteins out of meals after they do intense training and looking how that affects recovery 3 days later, so they're more ready. And different proteins have different amino acid contents, different proteins have different creatine contents. And so if you compare a plant protein versus an animal protein that has a better profile, you may actually be able to mediate recovery. And so our recovery in our book, if you look, it's basically carbs, fluids, carbs, protein, especially essential amino acids, and then things like creatine, anti-inflammatories like tart cherry, and things to help the immune system, glutamine, vitamin C, antioxidants, things like that, because that can help that recovery response. And the idea is to be as active as you can and withstand those, and so you can have a better training adaptation over time. Don't get sick. That's really how we focus.
So much great advice. Stay active and consume that creatine and protein. Talk to me again. Just mention the name of that website before I let you go, the creatine website that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, it's creatineforhealth.com. And if you go on there, we did a conference about it's just 2 years now. We did it, and you actually can watch all the presentations about how it affects all aspects of health, from infants all the way to the elderly. And there are published papers. You can read the reviews that have been done, all for those that are published in Specialty Nutrients. And you can even download a free book that gives you all the science of it. And we're actually planning another conference in Munich in next spring in March, because there's so much data on the health aspects. And that will also be available for people to watch online. So creatineforhealth.com, great resource. If you have a physician that's not sure, you have articles about the benefits on blood pressure, the benefits on no adverse effects on the renal system. All these different topics have been studied extensively. And you're able to say, here, physician, here's what the data is. And they say, oh, okay, maybe something to try. And so that's really the purpose of that.
Well, I can recommend that conference because I actually found that conference on YouTube, and that's how I found your name. So, as I said, I can recommend it. I'll pop a link to that in the description for this particular episode. But can I give your book a mention again? It's called Essentials of Exercise and Sports Nutrition, Science to Practice. Professor Richard Kreider, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Keep working out, folks.
Hey, if you like that video, check out this video here, which tells you how to get rid of that stubborn belly fat.